Welcome to Personology Podcast. In this second episode of Overcoming Weaknesses, I want to focus more on the common traits of people being born at certain time, and specifically the parts that can be viewed as weaknesses of the personality, all of which is based on personology theory by Gary Goldschneider. This is a part 2 of 4 episodes starting with summer season. Please refer to the beginning of the first episode to listen to the introduction and descriptions of the basic elemental and modal characteristics of personality. In addition, I recommend to always starting with descriptions of the period or week that covers the day you are interested in, so you can have the full context. The descriptions of the periods are a bit different in the birthday and relationship books, so I combined both and summarized them here in this podcast. However, a lot more details can be found in Gary's books, or you can check my website at personology.info. Also, you can read some of my posts in my blog at personology.substack.com, or if you prefer Czech language, you can for the first time buy the birthday book in electronic format at personology.info. You can also contact me with any related question at personology@email.com. Summer season. Generally speaking, those born in the summertime have more measured responses than those born in the spring have, and, although enthusiastic, are more critical. Summertime people need to be needed. Magic period of June 19th to 24th is a mix of Gemini and Cancer, as every CUSP personality comprises conflicting elements. The main conflict arises between the mental logic and precision of Gemini and the more diffuse, subtle emotionality of Cancer. They are seductive, isolated, selfish, and demanding. The advice is to exercise your magical powers with care. You may need to be a bit tougher on yourself. Keep your eye on the goal and resist any tendency to drift. Do not lose yourself so readily in ecstatic experiences, or you may have trouble finding yourself again. Beware of repressing your feelings or allowing destructive emotions to control you. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at June 19th as the day of the spark. People may have a tendency more than others to be provocative, troubled, and unaware. The advice is to be a bit more contemplative. Avoid getting locked into any one orientation or role. Stay in touch with the feelings of others and remain open to compromise. Following magic period with June 20th, the day of ecstatic appeal, people may have a tendency more than others to be overly emotional, repressed, destructive. The advice is be aware of your deeper feelings and the effect you may be having on others. Keep a cool head, use your brains, and express your emotions. Don't try to stuff your feelings down inside. It won't work. Following magic period with June 21st, the day of Worldly Rapture, people may have a tendency more than others to be uncontrolled, addictive, and dictatorial. The advice is not to let your ego run away with you. If you allow yourself freedom, what about everyone else? Let each person have their due. Don't be so overwhelming and controlling. Keep your appetite for pleasures and enjoyments appropriate to the occasion. Maintain your poise. Allow yourself to vegetate occasionally. Following magic period with June 22nd, the day of Romantic Exaltation, people may have a tendency more than others to be naive, unrealistic, and manipulative. The advice is to recognize the projective power of your fantasies. Beware of jealousy and possessiveness. Learn to let go. When you lose, admit defeat gracefully and move on, gaining from the experience. 2. Following magic period with June 23rd, the day of Interpersonal Enchantment, people may have a tendency more than others to be indiscreet, prying over involved. The advice is to deal regularly with practical, mundane matters. Keep your life and living space in order. Beware of having a loose tongue as far as others are concerned. Strive for discretion and tact in everything you do. Following magic period with June 24th, the day of the Blissful Wizard, people may have a tendency more than others to be troubled, destructive, and oblivious. The advice is to examine the effects of your work objectively and consider them from an ethical point of view. Keep in touch with society's values, it only to know what they are. Beware of becoming too withdrawn or isolated. The empath period of Cancer 1, June 25th to July 2nd, people quickly pick up on the feelings of others, so much so that they may mistake such feelings for their own. Those Cancers who allow themselves to get bottled up in a world of highly personal feelings may really put themselves through torture. They are aggressive, fearful, and needy. The advice is not to armor yourself too heavily. On the other hand, remain discriminating. Allow others the freedom to take risks. Though your salesmanship may be excellent, it is not always appreciated. Don't only challenge your fears, overcome them through self-liberation and action. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at June 25th as the Sensitive Receptor. People may have a tendency more than others to be oversensitive, moody, and unsure. The advice is to thrive to maintain some degree of objectivity in regard to your feelings. Protect yourself when necessary, but remain open to positive influences. Cultivate mental discrimination. Beware of mistaking someone else's feelings for your own. Following the empath period with June 26th, the day of Stamina, people may have a tendency more than others to be overly physical phobic and smothering. The advice is to back off a bit where your children or family are concerned. Have more confidence in their ability to take care of themselves. Don't test yourself so often. Keep it light. Following the empath period with June 27th, the day of the defensive developer, people may have a tendency more than others to be rigid, closed, and isolationist. The advice is to examine yourself periodically, question your views, listen to others, and loosen up a bit. Never underestimate your opponent and admit weakness when appropriate. Above all, find your spiritual path and keep on it. Following the empath period with June 28th, the day of emotional stimulation, people may have a tendency more than others to be oblivious, imprecise, grating. The advice is the following. Being the center of attention is fun, but we all have to grow up sooner or later. Work on your destructive side. Find a way to hold your tongue when necessary while maintaining your fine sense of humor. Following the empath period with June 29th, the day of airborne dreamers, people may have a tendency more than others to be passive and procrastinating. The advice is not to get so hung up on the expectations of others. Step out a bit more and trust in your ability to act autonomously. Develop more precise verbal skills. Hyper-serious people are bound to get uptight around you, so try to be considerate of their difficulties. Following the empath period with June 30th, the day of motivation, people may have a tendency more than others to be moody, repressed, and negative. The advice is to learn to like yourself more. See 3. What you can do for others. Channel your aggressions into creative pursuits if possible. Uncover your fears and work on them. Don't allow yourself to retreat into a shell. Following the empath period with July 1st, the day of emancipation, people may have a tendency more than others to be troubled, depressive, and long-suffering. The advice is the following. Happiness need not mean superficiality. Profundity need not mean negativity. Once you have gained insight, move out into the world. You can do it. Don't be afraid to stand alone. Supporters and friends will join you. Learn to take as well as to give. Never allow anyone to walk over you. Following the empath period with July 2nd, the day of the disconnected unconscious, people may have a tendency more than others to be insecure and anxious. The advice is to get in touch with your fantasy life. Examine how it conflicts with your emotional nature and then put it to work for you. Balance your inner and outer worlds. Try to meet the needs of others more effectively. The unconventional period of Cancer 2, July 3rd to 10th, people may be dominated in their life by obsession, and sometimes they just get stuck in their own inner worlds. They are self-destructive, obsessive, embarrassing. The advice is to make a real effort to get out in the world. Toughen your stance a bit and try not to be so sensitive. Develop your financial sense and cultivate your talent for maintenance and continuity. Keep contact with those who care about you. Put your active fantasy and imagination to productive use. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at July 3rd as the day of the commemorator. People may have a tendency more than others to be all-knowing, overcritical, and withdrawn. The advice is to try to enter more wholeheartedly into the social life around you. Take part rather than only observing. Don't be afraid to let others see into your inner life. Avoid adopting a double standard concerning observation and privacy. Don't give up on your efforts to be recognized. Following the unconventional period with July 4th, the day of the group representative, people may have a tendency more than others to be egocentric, biased, and fixed. The advice is to beware of chauvinism regarding your group's standing in society or the world at large. Try to maintain some objectivity and criticism in this respect. Beware of blanket endorsements. Remember that you are at times free to act as an individual, beholden to no one but yourself. Following the unconventional period with July 5th, the day of the showman, people may have a tendency more than others to be erratic, unreliable, and unstable. The advice is not to keep your imagination to yourself. Share it with others, thus brightening the daily lives of family and friends. Don't give in to depression if you go unappreciated. Keep on trying. Be mindful of the everyday tasks that require your attention. Following the unconventional period with July 6th, the day of magnetic desire, people may have a tendency more than others to be obsessive, stuck, and addictive. The advice is to learn to move on. Keep your mind open to new experiences and change. Develop your willpower and insight in order to withstand addictive or harmful temptations. Enjoy yourself in an easy way. Keep it light. Following the unconventional period with July 7th, the day of imaginative revelations, people may have a tendency more than others to be difficult, disturbing. The advice is the following. Your attempts at disclosure are not always appreciated. Try to be sensitive to the feelings of others on this point. 4. Remain true to your visions and relentless in your efforts. Don't let the world beat you down. You will be appreciated sooner or later. Following the unconventional period with July 8th, the day of the dark pragmatist, people may have a tendency more than others to be armored, smothering, and insensitive. The advice is the following. Every so often, lighten up a bit and have fun with no practical goal in mind. Treat those close to you to a good time also, and not just as a reward either. Work out out your aggressions in the context of fair play. If you need help, don't be afraid to ask for it. Being able to admit to your weaknesses is a sign of strength. Following the unconventional period with July 9th, the day of wonder, people may have a tendency more than others to be fanciful, disillusioned, and withdrawn. The advice is not to get discouraged. Keep true to yourself and your dreams. Try to be more selective in your interests. Focus your energy and avoid being carried away by unrealistic schemes. Keep your feet on the ground and maintain your emotional balance. Following the unconventional period with July 10th, the day of passive-active duality, people may have a tendency more than others to be procrastinating, uncommunicative, isolated. The advice is to take a more active role in the life around you. Your shyness is a barrier to your self-expression. Be more forthright. Don't be afraid to make mistakes or appear foolish. Give up the false security of judging from afar. The persuader period of Cancer 3, July 11th to 18th, are powerful manipulators of their environment. Although they may deal with their needs well, their desires and wants can easily get out of hand. They are excessive, manipulative, and insecure. The advice is not to be too so sure you know what is right for people. Work to keep your own house in order. Allow others to express themselves freely. Perhaps no one doubts your good intentions, so it may not be necessary to justify them. Be confident of your abilities at a deep level. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at July 11th as the day of the unsolicited opinion. People may have a tendency more than others to be overly talkative, misleading, and materialistic. The advice is to beware of embellishing the truth too much, or someday no one will take you seriously. Keep a rein on your imagination. Ground yourself in physicality, but beware of narcissism. Try to strike a balance between the airy and earthy sides of your nature. Following the persuader period with July 12th, the day of the persuasive presence, people may have a tendency more than others to be overprotective, controlling, and hard-headed. The advice is to learn to back off. Practice non-interference. Don't impose your ideas so forcefully. Always try to be sensitive to the needs and wishes of others. Following the persuader period with July 13th, the day of taken opportunity, people may have a tendency more than others to be impulsive, unforgiving, and self-denigrating. The advice is to always wait for the right moment. This is your great strength. Like a tiger, know when to lie still and when to leap. Your patience will be rewarded when you make your move. Give it all you have. Daring to fail is your key to success. Don't badmouth yourself. 5. Following the persuader period with July 14th, the day of the convincing storyteller, people may have a tendency more than others to be misleading, unreliable, and manipulative. The advice is to recognize and own up to your seductive powers, and having done so, serve higher constructive forces. Your effect on others is an indication of where you stand. Although you may grow by understanding your dark side, follow the light. Following the persuader period with July 15th, the day of material inducers, people may have a tendency more than others to be materialist and controlling. The advice is to learn to harness your material talents. Use them toward positive ends. Beware of addictions and obsessions which ultimately slow you down or set you back. Growth is a continual process of change. Evolve an ethical code that defines the person you want to be. Following the persuader period with July 16th, the day of the rising tide, people may have a tendency more than others to be repressed, unrealistic, and moralizing. The advice is to calm down. Allow your feelings an easy expression and don't repress them. Direct your passions in positive, non-intrusive ways. Learn not to antagonize or turn others off. Don't use wishes as an excuse for inaction. Remain positive, but not overbearingly so. Following the persuader period with July 17th, the day of career concerns, people may have a tendency more than others to be overconfident, unapproachable, and hardened. The advice is to give at least as much as you get. Avoid manipulating those close to you. Make your intentions clear. Don't sacrifice human concerns for your ambition. Lighten up and let yourself laugh. Following the persuader period with July 18th, the day of conviction, people may have a tendency more than others to be repressed, tethered, and fixed. The advice is not to lose yourself in your work. Get to know your emotions well and allow them easy expression. You are not always the center of every situation. Try to be emotionally honest in personal relationships. Don't be afraid of rejection. The oscillation period of the Cancer and Leo cusp, July 19th to 25th, people of all 12 cusps. This one most clearly shows the split influence of two adjacent signs almost opposite in their orientations, traditionally feminine, Moon and and masculine, Sun, orientations are combined equally in a single personality. They are manic depressive, addictive, emotionally blocked. The advice is to even out the highs and lows. The rewards of stability are great. Cultivate self-discipline, but never lose your spontaneity. Build a calm center that bolsters your confidence and remains at the heart of your being. Concentrate more on living in the moment, free of past problems and future expectations. Pace yourself for the long haul. Now specifically with each day, we begin at July 19th as the day of controlled movement. People may have a tendency more than others to be impatient, temperamental, and difficult. The advice is the following. Though you must bring your emotions under control, never lose your spontaneity and insist on freedom for yourself. Don't worry about appearing naive. Be more forthright. Beware of putting others on a pedestal or investing them with your own emotions. Following the oscillation period with July 20th, the day of UPS and downs, people may have a tendency more than others to be restless and dissatisfied. The advice is not to get trapped in a compromise no matter how comfortable. Keep your eye on the distant mountain and heed your inner. 6. Voice. Cultivate a sense of calm that stays with you. If you don't dare to dare, then dare to be happy with what you've got. Following the oscillation period with July 21st, the day of tragicomic controversy, people may have a tendency more than others to be obsessive, self-destructive, and argumentative. The advice is to try to get a handle on your propensity for risk-taking. Consider opposing arguments and points of view rather than rejecting them out of hand. Strengthen your center and learn how to reach it at will. As you grow older, make a gradual transition from the physical to the spiritual. Following the oscillation period with July 22nd, the day of occupational fluctuation, people may have a tendency more than others to be unlucky, stressed out, and self-unaware. The advice is to try to bring more stability into your life. M. Altonus. The key is structure. Relax and enjoy what you are doing, even when doing absolutely nothing at all. Take time to recharge. Learn to empty. Don't push so hard for success, as consistent and sustained efforts will be far more rewarding. Following the oscillation period with July 23rd, the day of uncertainty resolvers, people may have a tendency more than others to be depressive, crisis-prone, and overly vulnerable. The advice is not to try to be the savior for everyone's problems. Pay sufficient attention to your own without obsessing. Learn to let things go. Avoid earning around excess baggage. Give your critical and judgmental powers a rest from time to time. Following the oscillation period with July 24th, the day of exciting instability, people may have a tendency more than others to be unstable, flighty, and sexually obsessive. The advice is the following. At some time or other in your life, you will have to regulate your energies. Consider burnout. Your desires may not carry you as far as you think. Learn to be alone and like it. Try to be more considerate of others. Following the oscillation period with July 25th, the day of quixotic exploits, people may have a tendency more than others to be judgmental, struggling, and unrealistic. The advice is to concentrate more on the present moment. Try to be here rather than there. Pay attention to what others around you are saying and doing. Be more accepting of yourself. Continue to reach for the stars, but with your feet firmly planted on the ground. The authority period of Leo I, July 26th to August 2nd, people are the most powerfully authoritative of the year, and what usually appeals to them is asserting themselves and being taken seriously. They feel the need to dominate their environment, imposing on others, and may not be able to understand moodiness or negativity in others. Weak of authority would do well to work on their treatment of their fellow human beings, particularly in the areas of kindness, patience, and understanding. They are frustrated, demanding, and egotistical. The advice is learn to accept people as they are, both the positive and negative. It is probably useless to try to camouflage yourself, but do try to be more diplomatic and sensitive. Although you are good at making decisions for others, you may have overlooked making some crucial decisions for yourself. It doesn't make you less of a person to be a bit more easygoing. Now specifically with each day, we begin at July 26th, the day of the symbolic herald. People may have a tendency more than others to be provocative, blunt, and difficult. The advice is take a rest from yourself occasionally and let others do the same. Remember, you are just another part of everything around you. Cultivate humility and humanity. 7. Following authority period with July 27th, the day of the decision makers, people may have a tendency more than others to be change resistant, self-unaware, and procrastinating. The advice is face up to your real needs and wants. Don't agonize over personal decisions too long. Try to be honest with yourself. Beware of repressing your true feelings. Mental control can only take you so far. Learn to let go. Following authority period with July 28th, the day of the winter, people may have a tendency more than others to be insensitive, isolated, and resistant. The advice is learn to give unconditionally. Cultivate affection and kindness. The best interests of others may well be your own. Winning can sometimes be losing. Following authority authority period with July 29th, the day of cultural assessment. People may have a tendency more than others to be opinionated, clannish, and restricted. The advice is try not to overgeneralize. Remember that each person is an individual. Do not neglect your own personal process. Be proud of your heritage, but don't wrap yourself in it. Following authority period with July 30th, the day of tangible presence. People may have a tendency more than others to be phobic, repressed, and earthbound. The advice is try to see beyond the material world. Develop your mental faculties. Open yourself up to deeper emotional contact and new experiences that can change you. Cultivate an interest in metaphysical subjects. Following authority period with July 31, the day of the human portrait. People may have a tendency more than others to be anxious, disturbed, and isolated. The advice is not to let pessimism occupy a central position in your life and work. Your realism should not be a prescription for unhappiness. Share your knowledge and bring insight to those around you. Following authority period with August 1st, the day of original style. People may have a tendency more than others to be difficult and isolated. The advice is to try to beware of the feelings of those around you. Don't cut yourself off from them. Take time off from your crusade to attend to daily matters. Beware of the enmity your intensity may engender. Learn to compromise when necessary. Following authority period with August 2nd, the day of the versatile signature. People may have a tendency more than others to be impervious, disconnected, and irresponsible. The advice is to cultivate tact and diplomacy. Shed overbearing attitudes, particularly regarding children. Don't be so thin-skinned. Relax and be happy. Embrace self-examination and change. The balanced strength period of Leo II, August 3rd to 10th. People, despite their tremendous powers of concentration and fixation, they may lose the peripheral vision necessary for keeping in touch with their surroundings. Thanks to their intense loyalty and devotion, they may have a tendency to suffer unnecessarily. However, these intense Leo-2s are not especially empathic with those around them. They are masochistic, depressed, guilty. The advice is to watch your temper. Hot-headedness can throw you off balance and aid your opponent. Compromise and diplomacy are virtues to be cultivated, not weaknesses to be despised. Remain open and vulnerable to love. Don't be too hard on yourself or too demanding. Ease up a bit on the expectations you place on others. 8. Now specifically with each day, we begin at August 3rd as the day of the dangerous quest. People may have a tendency more than others to be reckless, self-destructive, and egotistic. The advice is to investigate carefully whether the poor victim really wants to be rescued. Beware of endangering yourself and others for no good reason. Don't dream your life away in idle, exciting fantasies. Seek an ideal of balanced, determined strength. Following the balanced strength period with August 4th, the day of the guiding light. People may have a tendency more than others to be oblivious, hot-headed, and undiplomatic. The advice is to remember your responsibilities. Try to temper your dislike of authority and be more tactful in dealing with your superiors. Your freedom is not always the most valuable thing. Learn acceptance, concentration, awareness. Following the balanced strength period with August 5th, the day of resolute composure. People may have a tendency more than others to be combative, repressed, and overly nonverbal. The advice is to increase your knowledge and understanding of people. Come to value affection and kindness. Let up a bit on the demands you make of yourself and others. Learn to express your feelings in a socially acceptable and constructive way. Following the balanced strength period with August 6th, the day of unique happenings. People may have a tendency more than others to be disillusioned, reckless, and antisocial. The advice is to acknowledge the fact that you will be faced with the need for compromise. In order to get love and affection, you may have to give up some of your craving for new experiences. Develop the capacity to see things from another person's point of view. Following the balanced strength period with August 7th, the day of the double agent. People may have a tendency more than others to be prying, self-hurtful, and reclusive. The advice is to put your talents for investigation to use in a constructive way. Your fantasy may be applied to more than just private satisfaction. Try to be fair and honest with those close to you, and still more important, remain true to yourself. Following the balanced strength period with August 8th, the day of the role players. People may have a tendency more than others to be egoistic, overly driven, and unaware. The advice is to take time off from your active life and develop your contemplative side. Relax with your family. Make your goals realistic ones, but don't ever get stuck. Remain adaptable and flexible. Following the balanced strength period with August 9th, the day of psychological leverage. People may have a tendency more than others to be righteous, authoritarian, and prodding. The advice is the following. What you believe to be true for the welfare of others is not always for the best. Remember the power your words have to control and to hurt. Therefore, beware of undue influence on the lives of others. Learn to listen carefully. Following the balanced strength period with August 10th, the day of the velvet voice. People may have a tendency more than others others to be needy and lacking in self-trust. The advice is to question your attachment to external values. Develop self-confidence so that you are not so dependent on the opinion and approval of others. Cultivate awareness, acceptance, unselfish love, and unconditional giving. 9. The leadership period of Leo III, August 11th to 18th. People may lack consideration for the wishes of others and may arouse antagonism. They have an overwhelming faith in their own abilities and may see themselves as infallible. They are dictatorial, selfish, and insensitive. The advice is to try to tone down your demanding and commanding side. Hold the mirror up to yourself as well and examine your motivations carefully. Battle to keep the combatant in you more peaceful. Take some distance from yourself. Admitting weakness can also be a sign of strength. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at August 11th as the day of validation. People may have a tendency more than others to be somber, disturbing, and hurtful. The advice is to keep your instincts and impulses under control. The truth can teach, but it can hurt too. Remember that your success may be in direct proportion to your diplomatic skills. Cultivate your affectionate and accepting side, and remember the importance of small acts of personal kindness. Following the leadership period with August 12th, the day of convention, people may have a tendency more than others to be tyrannical and superior. The advice is to come down occasionally from your ivory tower and mix a bit with your fellow human beings. Learn to share and to accept, and most importantly, to relax, laugh, and have fun. Be aware of the strength of your disapproval. Following the leadership period with August 13th, the day of long odds, people may have a tendency more than others to be quirky, oversensitive, and insecure. The advice to do your best with what you have and never allow the world to get you down. Find others of like taste and mind. Beware of anger and tyrannical tendencies. Try to remain open and trusting. Don't retreat into your own private world too much. Following the leadership period with August 14th, the day of the mortal mirror, people may have a tendency more than others to be self-unaware, escapist, and disturbing. The advice is to apply your understanding of the human condition to your own life. Turn a mirror to yourself. Evaluate your personal processes and monitor them regularly. Do not lose your spontaneity, but moderate it. You can change yourself if you want to. Following the leadership period with August 15th, the day of royal command, people may have a tendency more than others to be over-aggressive and insensitive. The advice is the following. Your place cannot be first in every line. Learn to cooperate with your fellow human beings. Beware of an excessive desire for control and adoration. Listen carefully to what people say when they try to explain their feelings. Following the leadership period with August 16th, the day of high voltage, people may have a tendency more than others to be destructive, rebellious, and excessive. The advice is to learn to transform your voltage when necessary to run conventional human appliances. Try not to burn them out for their sake. Be a bit kinder to your enemies. You may need them too. Put a little more energy into your inner spiritual life. Following the leadership period with August 17th, the day of explosive power, people may have a tendency more than others to be tempestuous, antagonistic, and aloof. The advice is to moderate your intensity when appropriate. Use downtime to examine your motivations. Get to know yourself better. Observe yourself in daily life and learn to recognize the early warning signals of destructive temper. Try to keep things light. 10. Following the leadership period with August 18th, the day of endurance, people may have a tendency more than others to be struggling, obsessive, and combative. The advice is the following. Pain is not always necessary. Overcoming is not the only way to proceed in life. Don't get overly self-involved. Enjoy yourself when out in the world. Learn to take time off and relax. The exposure period of Leo and Virgo CUSP, August 19th to 25th, people are a blend of introvert and extrovert. They may hide certain personal qualities or facts about themselves for years. Emotional immaturity may plague those born on this cusp until they fully accept the challenges of growing up. They are narcissistic, secretive, and non-sharing. The advice is not to blame the world for not recognizing you if you hide yourself away. Be more transparent. Let people see what you are really like. Beware of keeping secrets even from yourself. Allow others in to share in both your joys and sorrows. Now, specifically with each day, we begin at August 19th as the day of startling surprises. People may have a tendency more than others to be overconfident and secretive. The advice is not to procrastinate. Why hide so much? Learn to be more open and sharing. Do you alone have a handle on the truth? Beware of appearing too smooth. Stay centered. Don't get sidetracked. Following exposure period with August 20th, the day of the cryptic secret, people may have a tendency more than others to be troubled, lonely, and escapist. The advice is the following. Once recognized or understood, the past may be better forgotten. Let go. Don't dwell so much on things. Today can be a new beginning. Actively seek joy. Allow yourself the very best that there is. Following exposure period with August 21, the day of the standout, people may have a tendency more than others to be overprotective, withdrawn, and elusive. The advice is to try to make your peace with social demands. Find a balance between your public and private lives. Be more trusting, more open. Don't pass judgment on others so quickly. Beware of feeling that you must prove yourself. Following exposure period with August 22nd, the day of seasoned experience, people may have a tendency more than others to be domineering, egotistical, and inflexible. The advice is to remain open to advice and suggestions. Don't overpower your loved ones or associates. Admit your human weaknesses and others will like you better. You don't have to always put on such a tough front. Following exposure period with August 23rd, the day of lively precision, people may have a tendency more than others to be self-involved, detached, and emotionally blocked. The advice is to try to stay sensitive to the feelings of others, but, more importantly, get in touch with your own needs on a deeper level. Keep aggressive urges under control while remaining uninhibited. Make a conscious effort to give unconditionally. Don't lose yourself in material concerns. Following exposure period with August 24th, the day of astute examination, people may have a tendency more than others to be over-analytical, stifling, and obscure. The advice is not to make such a production out of small matters. Occasionally allow things to run their course. Your observations are not always appreciated. Follow your heart more often, while respecting the wishes of others. Some secrets are better left unrevealed. Following exposure period with August 25th, the day of the unabashed extrovert, people may have a tendency more than others to be needy and insecure. The advice is the following. You are a 11 valuable person. Don't spend so much effort in attracting or winning the approval of others. Get to know yourself better. Do you like yourself? If not, work on it. The system builders period of Virgo I, August 26th to September 2nd, people may be too dependent on structure and too upset by chaos. They are fixed in their mental attitudes, and it is difficult for them to be objective of their own emotions. They may be tempted living their lives through others. They are rigid, emotionally unaware, and self-destructive. The advice is to soften your stance a bit. Take things as they come and let them go as they will. Try to keep your work and home life separate. Step out a bit and demand dependability from others. 2. Protect yourself from hangers-on and parasites. Occasionally be more selfish and unashamedly demand benefits for yourself. Now specifically with each day, we begin at August 26th as the day of the supportive partner. People may have a tendency more than others to be passive, repressed, and self-sacrificing. The advice is the following. Sometimes being too accepting is not good. Learn to stand up for yourself. Be more forceful in demanding rights in return for the work you do. Don't live through others. Take the lead yourself sometimes. Following the system builders period with August 27th, the day of social ideals, people may have a tendency more than others to be overinvolved, depressive, and stress-prone. The advice is not to wallow in your personal problems. If you are not helping others, begin at once. The energy you receive from these endeavors will light your way and help you find your place in the world. Don't allow fixed ideals to limit your thinking and creativity. Following the system builders period with August 28th, the day of language, people may have a tendency more than others to be inflexible, puritanical, and unaccepting. The advice is not to always be so sure that your answer is the only right one. Learn to listen to other points of view. Avoid drowning those around you in endless facts and examples while missing the big picture. Stay on the straight and true path. Following the system builders period with August 29th, the day of structured action, people may have a tendency more than others to be escapist, needy, and unstable. The advice is to lighten up. Get to know and like yourself. Go with the flow. Learn to make an easy transition from public to private life, and avoid making impossible demands on yourself. Take frequent vacations with those you love. Following the system builders period with August 30th, the day of the rock, people may have a tendency more than others to be authoritarian and flexible. The advice is to beware of fostering dependency in others. Teach your children to be self-sufficient. Be flexible when it comes to rules. Don't feel you have to control every aspect in your environment. Cultivate your spiritual side and look beyond what this world has to offer. Following the system builders period with August 31, the day of the public appearance, people may have a tendency more than others to be frazzled, socially dependent, and caustic. The advice is to seek inner guidance. Spend more time alone with yourself and lessen your need for approval or attention. Find a good balance between fun and responsibility. Cultivate your appreciation of others. Following the system builders period with September 1st, the day of no-nonsense, people may have a tendency more than others to be insistent, grim, and unyielding. The advice is to learn when to quit, when to walk away, even when to run away. You may not be quite as powerful as you think you are. B. 12. Guarded in dispensing advice. Try to cultivate a less serious aspect. Actively seek out and learn from others. Following the system builder period with September 2nd, the day of the businesslike attitude, people may have have a tendency more than others to be unyielding, moody, and explosive. The advice is to learn to balance your feelings. Do not be satisfied with second best. If you believe you can do it, get on with it. However, allow for inspiration. Don't just work for work's sake. Share affection with others. The Enigma period of Virgo 2, September 3rd to September 10th. People do not easily reveal what they are really thinking. Indeed, showing emotion can be difficult for them. Behind their attractive or impressive exterior may lurk an unexpectedly guarded and discriminating individuals. They are guarded, over-exacting, and detached. The advice is to try to maintain flexibility and acceptance without compromising your high standards. Open your heart in love relationships. Be aware of your condemning and unforgiving side. Gentleness, kindness, and diplomacy are traits worth developing. Beware of putting yourself above the law or outside society. Don't be afraid to show your vulnerability. Now specifically with each day, we begin at September 3rd as the day of the mold breakers. People may have a tendency more than others to be procrastinating, overly stoic, or yielding. The advice is to actively seek to do what you really want to do. Develop your self-confidence and assertiveness. Don't be afraid to fail. Try not to cultivate too much mystery around what you do. Take the time to explain your methods and motives to others. Following Enigma period with September 4th, the day of the builder, people may have a tendency more than others to be inflexible, demanding, and over-exacting. The advice is to try to put your knowledge of how things work to a morally sound end. Follow your desire to serve, but don't neglect your own needs. Let up on your demands where you can, while still maintaining high standards. Following Enigma period with September 5th, the day of the fanciful sovereign, people may have a tendency more than others to be self-destructive, unaware, and excessive. The advice is the following. Without losing your romantic sparkle, keep a firm grip on reality. You can't get away with breaking the rules forever. Sooner or later the reckoning will come. Get to know yourself better and like yourself more. Following Enigma period with September 6th, the day of unpredictable fate, people may have a tendency more than others to be self-involved, repressed, and fatalistic. The advice is to learn to work with late. It is neither your enemy nor your friend, but it can become an accepted companion. Don't be afraid to take the initiative. Build solidly and let go of some of your cherished illusions. Don't believe that you are misfortune-prone. Following Enigma period with September 7th, the day of success seekers, people may have a tendency more than others to be over-competitive, insensitive, and unforgiving. The advice is to find it in your heart to accept. Tilting with windmills is not all there is to life. Learn to enjoy yourself and then pass that gift to others. Don't be so hard on yourself and those near and clear to you. An inflexible attitude plants seeds of rebellion. 13. Following Enigma period with September 8th, the day of the puzzling purist, people may have a tendency more than others to be unyielding, authoritarian, and misdirected. The advice is the following. Your ideas are not always easy for others to accept. Don't push them too hard. Let others breathe a bit. Strive to be yourself. Beware of a tendency to be bossy or insensitive. Following Enigma period with September 9th, the day of difficult demand, people may have a tendency more than others to be fearful, insecure, and needy. The advice is the following. Building your self-confidence is a big item. Allow for reflection. Then find your real abilities and act on them decisively. Worry and tear will eat you up if you let them. You alone hold yourself back. Stay joyful and never despair. Following Enigma period with September 10th, the day of private goals, people may have a tendency more than others to be frustrated, anxious, and excitable. The advice is to pay more attention to yourself, not only to your needs but to your wants. Follow your own path and develop the talents you have been given to the fullest. Don't judge others too harshly, nor yourself. Expand your horizons to include wider possibilities for the future. The literalist period of Virgo 3, September 11th to September 18th, people may be demanding what they need for themselves. They may dominate those less willful and determined than themselves. They do not like emotional displays, particularly public ones. They are sensationalistic, judgmental, and ruthless. The advice is to try to be more sympathetic to the feelings of others. Not everyone is as strong-willed and directed as you. Don't get bottled up in your head. Cultivating a love of food, sleep, and sensuous activities is essential to the grounding of your energies. Do not hide behind or rely too heavily on those who would serve you. Now specifically with each day, we begin at September 11th as the day of dramatic choice. People may have a tendency more than others to be easily bored, manipulative, and judgmental. The advice is not to take yourself and your beliefs so seriously. Be more forgiving. Try to understand what makes others act the way they do. Being secretive may not be necessary. Develop your natural talents. Dare to fail. Following the literalist period with September 12th, the day of the fearless crusader, people may have a tendency more than others to be dry, cynical, and closed. The advice is to try to develop a decent personal life for yourself. Moderate your workaholic tendencies if you want to live longer. Don't make promises you can't keep or bite off more than you can chew. Watch your health, if only out of consideration to your loved ones. Following the literalist period with September 13th, the day of passionate care, people may have a tendency more than others to be off track, hardened, and unaware. The advice is to be sensitive to the needs of those around you. Do not neglect your spiritual self or allow your emotional side to be suppressed. Fight your tendency to choose a difficult path. Expect a degree of compromise, but not where ultimate goals are concerned. Following the literalist period with September 14th, the day of the perceptive critic, people may have a tendency more than others to be critical, difficult, and impatient. The advice is to sometimes keep your opinions to yourself. They are not always appreciated. Learn to work behind the scenes. 14. Beware of arousing resentment when you push others. Let things happen in their own good time. No one has a monopoly on intelligence. Following the literalist period with September 15th, the day of mastery, people may have a tendency more than others to be materialistic, overly ambitious. The advice is to keep your ethical principles intact. Without them, you are a leaf blowing in the wind. Your patience and ability to wait will take you a long way. Resist compromising toward financial reward. Gel a grip on your physical desires. Don't let the tail wag the dog. Following the literalist period with September 16th, the day of spirited energies, people may have a tendency more than others to be sensationalist, rebellious, and destructive. The advice is not to get too comfortable. Continue to take risks. Never lose your ability for change. Stay in touch with what's happening in the world. Keep your cash flow. 9. Don't be too suspicious of new friends and acquaintances. Following the literalist period with September 17th, the day of perseverance, people may have a tendency more than others to be conservative, fixed, and heavy. The advice is the following. Judging others may be your worst habit. Try to be more accepting. Make time for fun. Goofiness and silliness are nothing to be afraid of. Get out of the way and let others come through. Following the literalist period with September 18th, the day of internal mystery, people may have a tendency more than others to be isolated, troubled, and negative. The advice is to learn to be more perseverant. Conflict is sometimes necessary. Try to understand what your body is telling you. Don't ignore physical symptoms. Your mysterious nature may be keeping out the light. Brighten up